Hello and welcome to my podcast, Conversations with David. I am your host, David Owasi. And on this podcast, we're really talking to professionals and entrepreneurs across the country. We are learning about what keeps them passionate, what keeps them going, and we're also talking about lessons learned along the way. Now, I am very excited about my chat this morning with my good friend, Bryce North. Bryce is a very seasoned entrepreneur, and you'll hear that during our conversation. And I'm very excited to have him on the show. Why don't you introduce yourself, Bryce?
First of all, David, thanks for having me here. Really excited for this podcast. So again, I want to thank you for having me on. A little bit about myself here. So, a bit of a serial entrepreneur and have a lot of fun, different companies in SaaS and IoT projects. That really all led me today to kind of be more of an investment and pitch coach. I do a couple things, and one of them is my consulting business, which I have a company called Don't Be a Little Pitch. And I help entrepreneurs who are looking to raise their seed funds. So we do everything from helping you with your investment story, your pitch deck, your verbal pitch, your outreach strategy, and finding those angel investors. So that's one side of me. And the other side, I do a lot in the AI space, some sales and marketing for a company called Master of Code.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And we'll dive into some of those areas of what you've listed there. But the really way I wanted to start from, Bryce, is just to start out with your entrepreneurship journey. What was it that really got you interested in entrepreneurship in the first place? What was that for you?
Yeah, this actually went back to elementary school. It was career day and everyone had to pick a name out of a hat. My friends got doctors, some people got lawyers, and I had this word entrepreneur. I had zero clue what it meant. But I was intrigued. I was intrigued enough to kind of, be a little more self-motivated to look into it. Now, of course, I mean, the projected salary is at 100,000 plus on the little sheet I got. That was exciting, but I mean, the word really intrigued me to find out more someone who actually can create and build its own success really out of nothing.
Absolutely. And over your career, you have built a few number of companies from Feedback to Advolve Media to TrapTap. I think TrapTap was one of your biggest one. That's when I got to know you. What has that journey been like for yourself? Moving from company to company and creating companies. How has that evolved for you?
Yeah, for sure. So a couple things, one, it's lowered my or it's increased my probability of success. A sense. I mean, they say it takes 4 or 5 notches on your belt of failures before you actually become successful. Now that's in the valley. I mean, I'm here in Winnipeg in Canada, so that's exponentially just bigger. So I mean, it's got me a little smarter throughout, these ventures and these failures, how to do things right the next time, and how to not focus on timing, because we can get that later on. Timing is never an issue. On the other side of it is just the emotional side, how to probably and practically deal with stress with your failures, like ignore the media and so forth, because it's hard. I'm in point, it's damn hard to do and build companies here, especially, when you tie your identity and everything to them. When they start collapsing and failing, that perseverance to get out of that is really what makes the people and everyone other entrepreneurs successful.
Yes, absolutely. And I definitely agree with you here. There's a lot of, it's very hard to build a successful company. I've tried myself. I know my second company I tried building called Caps Lock was not successful, but that's okay because, that's just part of the whole journey. But before we talk about failures and, how you respond and deal with failure, I really wanted to ask you about like your first year of being an entrepreneur. And the reason why I ask that is a lot of our listeners are probably thinking, should I try being an entrepreneur? Should I go into it? Is this the right time? Is this the right opportunity? What was your first year of being an entrepreneur or a business owner like? What was that experience like for you?
Amazing, absolutely amazing, and it's the reason why it took me a little longer to find success. I'll tell you why in a second, but that first year being an entrepreneur was just so new. It's called the cheerleading effect, right? Everyone around you is cheering. All the hype is really big. We know startups are a hot topic right now, and everyone wants to be in the spotlight. They want to be an influencer, a YouTube creator. They want to be someone who actually can be recognized and eventually make a lot of money, right? But when I was first starting my startup in the Winnipeg tech scene, that scene was very new. And because that scene was very new, I mean, we were featured in every newspaper, every radio station, TV show. We were winning awards left and right. We were doing public presentations and keynote speeches. And we weren't successful. The business wasn't successful. So all this hype pumped us up, made us believe that we were untouchable, we were amazing. And man, did that feel damn good, right? That's a drug in itself by being in that spotlight. And that's problematic. That is super problematic because later down the road, you realize that you need to put your head down, grind, ignore everything else, and push. Because when things are great, the media is there and everyone's there. When things are bad, everyone disappears. A lot of your network goes away, right? And you have those good support friends and entrepreneurs, but it's in swing. So it's amazing. But you got to realize that that energy you get from starting your first business on all that hype should just excel you to move forward and focus and concentrate on just finding customers, making sales, and just try to get out of the spotlight, get off social media as much as possible.
Absolutely, I do agree with you. I think some of the lure and the attractiveness of being an entrepreneur is tied to some of the big names we know, the Elon Musk's, the Mark Zuckerbergs, and I guess honestly, even for myself, sometimes I feel like I want to be like these guys. I want to be popular and famous. But what you're saying is that that should not be the motivation. That should not be the draw. If anything, that is perhaps a distraction to success as an entrepreneur. Is that correct?
Yeah. If you want to make a lot of money, if you want, better work-life balance, if you want flexibility and freedom and pure happiness all the time and predictability, entrepreneurship is not the way to go, right? I mean, that's what we tell ourselves. That's the end goal. But in the end, it's if you want something where you can believe that you can actually contribute your talents, are continuously wanting to learn, improve, imply, and problem solve, and love being in a chaotic mess the whole time because that really excites you to kind of solve these problems, push forward, and persevere, then entrepreneurship is great for that. And that's the type of person I am. I mean, I love organized chaos, but I love problem solving. I make, well, I wasn't beginning a lot less money than a lot of other people who went straight into 9 to 5 jobs right from my university. But I love the heat of everything, running my own teams, figuring out my own problems, and not necessarily working for the man, even though I was paid a lot less. It was really funny. I had a conversation yesterday with a friend of mine, or through a business community, and we were talking about him. Just he exited his same company twice. He's like, yeah, when I was it was a 2014, I sold it for X number of dollars, and then in 2017, I sold it for 400 million. Which yeah, he's like, by the time I'm 38, he's like, I sold my company for 400 million.
That's
And
crazy.
I'm sitting here thinking like, oh no, like I mean, this guy, like I'm what, like 5 years away from that, and I'm not even close to selling a company for 400 million, and it hurts, it stings a
Hmm.
bit, right?
Mm.
But then you got to realize deep down inside, like that shouldn't be your motivation. And like he went through a lot, like
Hmm.
just constantly everything he's lost and everything he put into, it's risk reward type of thing. But you got to ignore the hype.
Absolutely. And so basically what you're telling me here, what at least what I'm hearing from you is you really have to drill down on your why. Why am I doing this? Why am I being an entrepreneur? Is it just for the fun of it? Is it because I'm solving a problem? And I guess my question is, how do you really answer that question for yourself? How are you honest with yourself to answer that why question? Because ultimately that is going to be one of the biggest drivers to your success or how you respond to failure, which we'll talk about in a minute. But how do you approach answering that question?
Honestly, just by being a little more self-aware and be authentic. I mean, honestly, if you want to do entrepreneurship because you want to make money and you want to be famous, you know what? You're probably not going to be successful, but go and do it. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. That was my motivations in the very beginning. I mean, yeah, I wanted my own flexibility and freedom. I want to be able to start my own companies, but I love the attention. I really did. I mean, we just talked about it. I was put in the spotlight too many times, and I wanted more of that. Right? I was becoming an influencer before, the big like Instagram blew up and all that. Um, and it made me realize what my core values were after that. Well, those weren't important. My network was important. My family, friends were important. My core values of wanting to sustainably build something and leave a legacy behind in that fact by doing good for the world, that became more evident. So my advice is, if you really want to go down this path, go start experimenting. Every person who says they want to be an entrepreneur startup talks about it, but never does anything. Go start something small, do a podcast, do a YouTube channel, go start a lemonade stand. I'm serious. Go start something to learn how this world works. Because I promise you one thing, it'll open up so many new doors of things for you to try. Pick one of those doors, whether right or wrong, and keep going down that path.
Yeah, definitely agree with you. There is almost no wrong way to approach entrepreneurship. One way or the other, you're learning something that will help your whole journey as a whole, and that's always going to be beneficial for you. Now, one of the things and the themes that has been sort of part of your brand is dealing with failure, embracing failure, if you will, and one of the it's a natural reaction to be afraid of change or to be afraid of doing something new. How would you advise someone who is perhaps thinking we're in a pandemic, perhaps maybe this is the best time to do that business idea I've been thinking about, or to start a new venture or do a new job? What would be your advice to someone who is being held back by fear of the unknown? How should you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, great question there. And a lot of us really can't get over that hurdle, right? We can't bridge that gap of how do we just get over that fear. And the only way of doing it is by closing your eyes and jumping. I mean, how are you going to jump off that big cliff, right? Into the body of water? You just got to be doing it. So do I have any special advice that's going to be what you're going to watch after this and be like, you know what, man? Yeah, I'm ready to do this. I don't. And I don't think there is any word out there or motivational quote that's going to move you. You have to really want this. You have to really, really want this and find something you're passionate about. When I first started my first business, I wasn't passionate about it, and the numbers and sales show, right? My second one wasn't very passionate about it, and it showed. I learned, but you have two choices here. Find something you're super passionate about. Don't worry about the income side of it and turn that hobby into a project. Or the other side is going down any company, whether you don't care, just to more of a learn on someone else's dollar, right? Be an entrepreneur instead of entrepreneur and really kind of get your toes wet that way. Go work for a startup. Why don't you just do that, right? Go see what it's like to scale a SaaS company or a product company, and maybe deliver and work on project and product development and management.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's obviously no magic word that will prompt someone to, to start something, but I guess just kind of going all in and, regardless of the fear, just pushing that aside and just plunging into the deep. That's only the solution. One of the
Yeah.
things that I'm curious about, Bryce, is, when you talk about follow your passion. Now, I've spoken to a lot of entrepreneurs and they say sometimes just having a passion is not enough. There has to be an interlap of what you're passionate about and what you're really good at, and sort of finding that in between. What's your perspective on that? Passion sometimes might not be enough to be successful. Sometimes you need to think of other things around passion. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I went through this here before. I would hire my smartest friends. I work with people that would just work quite intelligent when it comes down to certain aspects of business, and it failed.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe passion is a derivative of, motivation, right? Where we need to be motivated and want to do something.
Mm.
Where hard skills can be learned. You can learn to market. You can learn to sell. You can
Mm.
learn to develop and code. What you can't really learn to do is be motivated behind something, right? You can train yourself, but in the end, if you get bored after a while, you lose that motivation, aka you lose that passion. So
Mm.
I think that's a big driver. I think you have to be able to want to wake up every single day and be excited by something and let that emotion drive that vehicle, or your project in a sense.
Mm.
Yeah, within passion itself, I mean, that's a major driver for anyone when they're, building their project or doing their startup, right? Because that leads to a lot of motivation behind there as well too. At the end of the day, what making you wake up in the morning, energetic and want to pursue this opportunity here, right? And I mean, if you're not motivated by it and you're not excited by it, you're going to stop doing that. And I ran into those business partners who just, were in for the money or in for a bit of experience and so forth. But when things get really tough, I'm talking about really tough, because when you do your startup, there's no good day. There's never a good day. There's the best day of your life or the worst day of your life, right? And they are swings and sharp drops and sharp rises. They are swings. So that passion, that motivation is what's going to carry you through on this. Now, B players hire A players. Okay. So we're talking about, the latter side of passion is not enough. I agree. You need some talent. Go hire that. Go find that. Go learn that. Go experiment. Go network. Find those mentors. We previously talked about what motivates you or makes you, fearless. You're not scared of failure. Surround yourself with entrepreneurs. Surround yourself with other mentors and like-minded people, because when you see they're doing things, you're going to want to copy. When they're being successful or being motivated, you're going to want to do that same thing to keep up with them, right? And they're going to pick you up at that same time.
Absolutely. And thanks for that perspective. I do agree with you. Passion is very, very important. But again, passion is something you can't really replicate. And it's almost like the key ingredient, and everything else you can learn, you can grow, you can add people in your network who can help you in other areas, but except for passion, for sure. Now, Bryce, I'm very curious about your own story. I know you've told stories of your failure and how you've responded to those failures. Can you just share an example of, say, your biggest failure so far, and how you were able to respond to that failure in your based on your entrepreneurship journey?
Yeah, absolutely. My biggest failure. I have so many of them. We can talk. Geez, yeah. I guess my biggest failure in my rock bottom moments, I can break this up into two things. One was, with Advolve Media, how I put business and everything first, and lost my relationship with my best friend, lost my company, and so forth and that. And then TrapTap, which my biggest failure, which was my biggest company, was just like the timing side, the rush behind everything we're trying to do on that front. So with Advolve Media, we risked everything. We held on that company way too long. I talked about the hype, I got in the very beginning. That's my first big company, and made me believe to hang on way too long with that company. And I had friends in the company, and I pushed them, quite hard, because I believed that we were not going to fail, because that's what the media said, but that wasn't really realistic. I moved my life to Kitchener. When we raised a bunch of money, and things just started failing out there. Someone stole my idea out there. We lost our funding that we promised to go into the program. My team quit on me. And I had my rock bottom moment out there of realizing that, I'm in a city, I have no money, I have nothing left, and I lost everything, because we held on to this way too long. So that kind of made me pursue and push forward. And I got some of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten from some of the smartest people out there. I had one mentor tell me that, after I had a really bad week of really bad things happening to me and everything failing, he told me I had 48 hours, 48 hours to really take all that stress, and deal with it. Pretty much take that 48 hours and deal with all the stress by crying, screaming, yelling, venting, whatever it takes, and come back with a plan fueled by that failure, and which is really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. That must have been very scary. I have not had an experience like that. A little smaller scale for me, but nothing at that scale where you move to a whole city and things don't work out. I want us to pivot a little bit to the finding capital and just growing your business. I know that's one of your area of expertise. You teach businesses how to raise money, how to find that first investor. Before we actually talk about finding your first investor, when do you think a business should start considering looking for an investor? Because not every business needs an investor, not every business needs capital. When do you think a business should start considering that?
I agree. So I like what you said there. Not every business needs capital. I think that a lot of businesses don't need capital, and a lot of them think they need capital because it's a milestone, right? We raise investment, awesome, we're successful. B, we're in the news, awesome, we're in TechCrunch. I don't think you need to raise capital all the time, because timing is never an issue, with companies, except your Airbnb and Uber. Uh, so what if your competition just raises $10 million? Their burn just went up significantly, right? So so yeah, within that said, for companies that are trying to raise money, when should they start talking to investors? Whether you think you're going to need money or not, you should be talking to investors day one you have the idea. And a lot of people always raise money too late. Now, your goal when it comes under raising money is never to try to raise money. And this is what I mean by this. One of the another best piece of advice I got was, if you ask for advice, you'll get investment. If you ask for investment, you'll get advice, right? So what that pretty much means is that you need to build your networks and your relationships with investors and start asking them for advice on how to grow things. When I come up with an idea, I'll start approaching people or the networks or my angel groups or new angel investors and let them know what I'm doing if it's something significant, right? I say, hey, David, I've got this really cool idea. It's doing this. We plan to do this, and this is, our opportunity. I want some advice from you on what you think, how I can fix one of these areas, right? Pick something, right? And then continue that relationship with that investor throughout the year. I'm not talking pinging them every single week or day, but maybe a couple times a year. Now, why are you doing this? We're getting on their radar, right? When we get on the radar, they're able to watch us and understand what we're going through and see us progress. Once we build that relationship, we ask them what their investment trigger points are. And a lot of these investors will say, well, I want you to have, monthly recurring revenue of X or yearly revenue of X, a certain user acquisition strategy or user numbers. I want you to have an MVP that can function like this. Every investor is different. If you meet them in the very beginning and you know these investment trigger points, that means you can build your startup, you can build your metrics, and you can build your growth around these points that's going to hit these metrics that they're looking for, and they will invest when you're ready and when you do hit them. So start early, start finding out what they want to invest in, start building that network, start asking for advice, get on the radar, and then when you do need that money, you're lined up.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a very, very good advice. Trying to understand what they need to see in your business to move forward with investing or putting cash into your business. But then, just to circle back a little bit, how do you know who should be a potential investor? I mean, there's your classic angel investor who's invested in thousands of companies already, but people like that are probably hard to get their attention. For someone who is just starting out in the game, who is maybe just starting out their first business, and they're thinking of finding potential investors, where should they be looking to find this investor? Especially as we're in Winnipeg, we're not known as a hotbed of tech by any means. If you're someone like that who lives in a bit of a remote location, you're not in Silicon Valley, how do you go about even finding that first investor to have that conversation, to know what they're looking for in your business?
Yeah, that's a great question here. So whether we're in Winnipeg, Toronto, Vancouver, I mean, they're a little bit different. Raising money in the US is a lot easier than Canada, right? Their risk tolerance is a lot different out there. And if you tell them they're better, faster, and stronger, the US usually, their investors want to invest. So you just need to start networking. A little hard due to COVID right now. Events are a great place of doing that, but that also opens up an opportunity that people are a lot more receptive online, such as platforms like LinkedIn, to take your messages. You need to learn how to properly pitch them. I actually have a full script on how to do this on my site at Don't Be a Little Pitch, which really walks you through. You can find me on YouTube too; it's all free. You can learn this and figure out actually how to properly reach out to an investor to get their attention and get on the radar and start that conversation. But it's going to start from just networking, pure reaching out, and leveraging your connections. Start talking to angel groups. You can look on Angel List. I think it's angel.co now. You can look at different angel platforms you'll find online. Just Google them. There's a lot for startups. Gus provides some interesting resources, and as well as just looking at VC firms and networking at different events as much as possible. What I really like to do is that I've actually accumulated a list of over 9,000 investors. I've actually categorized them by the type of investment they do, the industry, and their tolerance. So you can reach out to me if you're interested in this. But I built that list by literally looking at an angel list and seeing who these investors are, what they invest in, connecting with them on LinkedIn, starting that conversation and going through. And I think that's the best way of doing it.
Absolutely. And let's talk a little bit more about your company, Don't Be a Little Pitch. What would someone potentially get working with you? What kind of value, when they consult with you, would you be adding to them and their business as they look for that investment?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with who I don't work with, and it's usually people who just have an idea, who haven't built anything yet.
Mm.
Uh, and I'm not in the ideation stage. I like to work with companies looking for their first seed round because they have the traction, and that will be usually people looking for investments between 1 to 5 million. I'll also do under 5 million, half a million to million. It really depends on the circumstance. But what I'm able to offer through this, and what I usually do is I take these entrepreneurs in and we talk. Okay, what's your investment strategy look like? Do you have an investment deck, like your pitch deck? Is that sound solid? Does it have all your product information, your go-to market strategy? Does it have your financial strategy, your competitive landscape? And do you properly articulate your story and your product market fit? One of my favorite quotes from Mark Headland is, "For investors, the product is nothing." Most of us think that we need to pitch our products to these investors, and it's highly incorrect. We need to pitch our business. The first time I raised money for TrapTap, my first investor, I pitched him my idea, and he said, "Bryce, this is the worst idea I've ever heard in my life." But I said, "Hey, we just did $750,000 in 45 days." And he's like, "Where do I sign up?" Right? Product is nothing. Traction is absolutely everything. So we go through that deck. We make sure you have a physical, tangible story in PDF format. We make sure your verbal pitch is down with that, so you actually can properly articulate your story, whether it's on stage, whether it's investor meetings, or on the phone. And then we work on your other investment documents, like your executive summary or maybe some term sheets. And then we go into outreach. How do we properly reach these people on different platforms? I give them access to my investor list. I teach them how to reach out to them, how to utilize LinkedIn. And then the latter stage, when we get there, is how to do deal negotiation.
Very, very cool. That's that's a lot of value there. I guess I'm curious, what would be, in your opinion, the biggest mistakes people make once, like the first time they're trying to find capital? What would be the biggest mistake people make? I know one of the things you mentioned earlier was that, people they don't have any traction to back up their claims, and they thinking that their ideas is king, and that's the most important thing. But aside from that, what else do you think are common mistakes or pitfalls people make as they look for investment?
Yeah, I want to reiterate what you said. Traction is absolutely important, right? That proves product market fit. Do you have paying customers? Do you have letters of intent? Do you have emails? Emails is just as good. Do you have people signing up ready to use your product, right? Do you have an MVP? That's huge. I've been connected with investors who said to me, Bryce, I have zero clue how you got connected and got my email. The people who gave it to you never ever solicit or taken cold pitches. And so I got really good at cold pitching people and getting information. And that really comes down to what's in it for them and what's that traction behind there. So that's a big mistake people make, is not focusing on traction. And the other side part of that is people who love to build before they sell. Everyone loves to build their technology, their SaaS, their app. Us entrepreneurs love to do the $10 an hour jobs instead of the $1,000 an hour jobs because it's fun. We can organize our desk, we can build our logo, we can fix our website. All that is bullshit. What you need to be focusing on is finding your customers from day one. If you go to an investor and say, hey, Mr. Mrs. Investor, I have a list of 20,000, maybe more realistic, 10,000 people, if it's SaaS company, or 50 businesses who are ready to buy. Here's cash they've already injected, or here's letters of intent, right? Bring that to any investor, they're going to invest in you because you have that customer and that product market fit figured out, right? Building's the easy part. You can just hire smart people to build things, right? Those are hard skills in that sense. So that's what people need to do. For TrapTap, I mean, we pre-sold, like I said, $750,000 worth of product from just a napkin drawing, essentially. I mean, we took this, we went some Photoshop, we did some visualization, but it was all fake. We started with a napkin drawing, and in 9 months in that napkin drawing, we prototyped. Actually, in the right order, we pre-sold $750,000, we prototyped, we manufactured, and we delivered to 20 countries in 9 months, right? Which is huge. But it all started with actually going out and pre-selling before actually even building anything. Now, the hardest part was actually building a product that looked like our drawings, but I mean, money can always sort that out.
Yeah, so it's all about showing some proof behind the idea before asking for any support from an investor. That really is what makes
Lower
the
the risk for the investor. Prove that this is going to work out, right? Either have skin in the game, which a lot of us don't have money for, so find the customers.
I know when you explain that way, it makes total sense. But sometimes when you're in the mode and you're in the business, you're not even thinking about that. You're thinking of how great your idea is, but you don't have any proof of how great your idea is, right?
And we're scared of people stealing our ideas, which honest to God should never be a fear, right? If you have the idea and you're pitching, you're probably most likely the one that's better off to run that idea because you've thought so much about it and you have the passion behind it, right?
Sure.
Don't be scared about people stealing your ideas. Yes, it's happened to me. Yes, it's happened to others, but it's not really worth the risk of holding back, right?
Sure. And also you have more opportunities to get some critical feedback and some real pushback, and you have to defend and think about some other scenarios you probably wouldn't think about for your idea.
I agree.
Yeah. So another thing I know you're an expert of is growing and scaling your business. So you had a great ideas, you've had people pre-order or booked and sort of validate that the idea is really something solid. How do you then start to really grow and scale your business to the potential it can have? How do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, great question here. And it really depends what area and what business you're looking in. But how do you grow and scale a company? By putting on the blindfold and throwing everything against the wall, right? I mean, that's what a lot of us do. And so we experiment. We experiment by different areas and we learn. We're continuous learning. So instead of just blindly fumbling through, find mentors, find an advisory network, find people who've done it before, hire them, get them for free, bring them on your advisors, your board. B players, hire A players, right? Even if you're not hiring them as employees, bring them on as some sort of mentor so they can guide you. That's number one. Two, there's so much online learning these days and courses you can find just on the web. I mean, you have a certain area of business you want to grow, go take a course, learn it, and experiment, right? And once you become slightly good at it, you can now level up and find the people and relate with them on this tier. And once you get better and better, you'll find better mentors. So the only way I can say really is stop stressing and start doing. Right? A lot of us are just scared. So who cares if you fail? You'll never make that mistake again, or you might get lucky, you might be successful, or you'll open up a new door to find success in another direction.
Yeah, yeah. So thanks for the advice, and that's that makes a lot of sense. It's easy to overthink things. It's easier to just do it and learn from whatever it is that happens from your action. That's always better than trying to think of all the potential things that could happen without actually doing stuff. But one of the things you mentioned, Bryce, was that you need to surround yourself with a great team as you're trying to scale your business. And from your experience, some negative experience, I guess, you didn't have such a good time with some of the people you work with. I'm not sure, maybe I'm wrong in my assessment of that, but how do you actually bring the right people on board as you're growing your business? What should you be looking for when you're bringing people onto your team as you scale and grow your business?
Sure, absolutely. And um, I'm not going to talk about the odds of this happening here, but in my perspective, don't go into business with your significant other or your friends. A lot of us do, and that's okay. And a lot of those are successful, but at the same time, end of the day, you got to separate work life from relationships, and that's very hard to do. So, how do you find the right people? When it comes down to these, it's honestly just your network, right? Who do you see that's passionate enough, driven enough to make this happen? Who, which in my age right now, I'm not going to be working with someone who's just really new to startups, right? I have a certain level of experience right now that I can either do two things. I can go find someone on level with me or someone a little bit higher, right? Or hire people who may be a little bit underneath who want to learn, but I'm in a different plane of ground right now, right? I'm not saying I'm better. There's always someone better and worse than you. For people who are just starting out, maybe it's a good thing to find someone who's just as eager to learn with them, who will take the 10, 20 times longer we'll take to learn it, but we'll do it together because they're passionate to make it happen, right? And just go out and start networking and maybe find people who are a little better than you, smarter, have done it before, learning under them, working for another startup. In the community, it's huge. Us entrepreneurs support other entrepreneurs. So you will find other people, just like you found me by being within the community here. One day down the future, like, Bryce, I have this idea, or David has this idea, and I know you're good at this. I'm good at something. We may come together and collaborate. So it's just going out as much as you can as possible. And how do you entice people and make them view you as impressive? By doing something. Doesn't have to be anything good, right? It can just be something you're so passionate behind and actually putting a lot of energy, whether the idea is crap or not. If you can show people that you're willing to work hard and put effort, and you're at least you're willing to learn and figure out and fumble, I mean, they're going to want to work with you, right? They see that. They just see that determination inside you.
Right. So I guess a lot of people try to be perfect. They try to do the perfect product or launch the perfect company, but then ultimately there's nothing less called perfection, because it can always be better, right? And you have to start from somewhere and then build it to improve whatever it is you're trying to build, right?
Yeah, if you're an independent person, you can handle the turmoil and the slumps by yourself. Go for it. But if you're like me, which I'm quite independent, but I also love a team. Whether I'm succeeding or failing with them, we can problem solve together because I can collaborate.
Mm.
That's what's really important. So find someone who is willing to be in the trenches with you, and when shit gets really, really tough, that they're not going to just quit and they're going to pull it out with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a very, very true words of advice and wisdom from someone who's been in the arena as often as yourself. Now, I know one of the things you're very passionate about, Bryce, is artificial intelligence and chatbot for businesses. I know ahead of our conversations here, I've been really thinking hard about the application of some of those technologies to the future, more so as we find ourselves in the pandemic and where you have to come up with creative ways to solve problems. Where do you see the role of artificial intelligence and chatbots for businesses moving forward? And how do you think the pandemic is going to make that even more crucial for businesses moving forward?
Yeah. So, I mean, I want to talk more on enterprise. We can fall into here, but I want to talk more startups and mid-tier because I think that's what obviously the conversation is here. And automation is really key to my heart, and how we can actually automate the things and not do those $10 an hour jobs. Either hire a VA to do that, um, for really cheap, or have a bot, essentially chatbot, to do that. So we can automate in three key areas, which there's so many more, but I really like. It's going to come down to customer service, it's going to come down to sales, and it's going to really come down to marketing. And I want to break that up into e-commerce because I'm a huge e-commerce guy. So when it comes down to automation and chatbots, COVID is really putting a stamp on everyone, showing them that you can, should, and this is how you can automate, essentially, right? That we don't need the personnel, we can work from home, and then we can eliminate the redundant tasks by using chatbots. So chatbots and customer service, is quite simple in the fact that we're talking to a bot. A bot can pull information and really answer any of the key questions that the customer asks. And we use artificial intelligence on top of that for the bot to get smarter, to learn how to read these utterances from people, because there are multiple ways to say one thing. So the bot's gonna be smart enough to understand the language, you can understand the intent, the utterance, and what the customer's looking for, right? And we can put them down a path of solving all these problems in the customer service role before moving to a live person. And the company worked for Master Code. At the same time, we've done stuff like T-Mobile, where we've eliminated 80% of customer support tickets from doing that. So it's really cool. And then another play I said for sales, you can automate a lot of sales for lead generation tools on your site of people looking for information, weed them out, find the ones you're looking for. And then e-commerce would be another 5-hour talk with you on what we could do. But essentially, how do you inform customers? How do we get them to opt in? Is it SMS bots we're doing, or web bots, or messenger bots, or WhatsApp bots, or et cetera, et cetera? Can we pull them into the funnel? Can we nurture them in that funnel? Can we feed them information so it makes it look like we're relevant and we're thought leaders? Can we pull them to our page? Can we retarget them? Can we do abandoned carts, abandoned categories, right? Can we send them relevant information? Open rates on bots are, on Messenger, they were like 80%, 90% compared to email rates are 25 to 30.
Right. Yeah. And I know when you were mentoring me from one of my startups, Caps Lock, that I was working on, that was the path you were pushing us into. And it really was a very useful path for our products because we were able to connect with a lot more people using that technique. What would your advice be for small businesses? So this would be your mom and pop shop, the local makers, especially here in Winnipeg. I've been working with more small and local businesses here as the pandemic has affected the industry. But would that be also very relevant to like a small, very mom and pop shop kind of businesses? Would that be useful to them as well?
If the inquiries from sales or marketing and customer service is too much for you to handle right now, then automate and use bots. If you're very small, I think you should focus on customer acquisition. How can you bring in more customers to the point where maybe you just don't have the money for hiring anymore? Marketing always. I think marketing is a different one, because if you can get people to opt in through SMS, send them deals, you can send them coupons, you can send them reminders. That's pretty cool. Focus on that. But until you have enough customers where that's going to be relevant, an email list of surpassing 5K or customers in your SMS base, then that's going to be relevant at that point. Focus on it. But everything else for a small business, for a new startup, it's just finding customers. That should be your number one focus.
Yeah, and for the sake of our small businesses owners who are listening to our conversation here, where would be the first place to start? In my experience, I started with Facebook chatbot, and that worked very well. Everyone is on Facebook anyways, and it was very easy to integrate it. Would you say that's sort of the good place to start that process, or would there be any other tools you'd recommend?
I would say it was a good process last year, because Facebook doesn't allow you to do broadcast messages anymore on Messenger, meaning that if you have people opt in for your bot, after 24 hours, you can't send them anything, which is stupid. I think Messenger is great for those abandoned carts, abandoned categories, and any information you can send a customer within 24 hours to nudge them to buy again, whether they're signing up for an ebook or a coupon or something like that, to kind of push them through. That's what's really great. It's a great place to start to practice on there. I think that's really good. When you really want to get into like the customer service type of web bots and so forth, there are some interesting platforms you can go check out that offer a lot of plug and play tools. Recart is another one we can use for abandoned carts and so forth. Crisp is another platform that allows some sort of automation. Google it. There are plenty of like click and drag opportunities.
For sure. And I'm just curious, considering you work with Massive Code and you do a lot of work in the AI chatbot space, is there any other themes or trends you're observing that has taken prominence as a result of the pandemic or pre-pandemic, and any insight on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's automating internal and external processes when it comes down to bots. I mean, bots isn't just for the general public, handling incoming traffic. It's also for internal processes. For instance, if you're looking for information, you can quickly ask the bot and it'll compile from all your documents, provide you what you need. Employee onboarding, you can use a lot of HR tasks. You can do a lot of, like I mentioned, document finding, or when documents are submitted, maybe it processes it like in a law firm, for instance, and distributes it to the right person. So
Hmm.
AI and automation is really intelligent when it comes down to just making our business processes as simple as possible, and removing the redundancy of actually needing people. So that's the trend right now.
Right.
And it's pretty interesting when it comes down to where businesses and enterprises are going to be moving.
For sure. Yeah. And thanks for that insight. I think that's very, very useful for our listeners to understand what is the future, which I think, automation, AI, chatbot is really going to help reduce the cost, if you will, for especially small businesses as they try to scale. Now, I want to pivot into on that topic that I think is something that's very important for myself. I think it's been important for you, and more importantly for businesses and entrepreneurs in general, because as entrepreneurs we have to market our brand, we have to communicate. And when I think about soft skills and emotional intelligence, and I think about entrepreneurs who's been successful in one way or the other, I see themes of these skills. So what would you say, in your opinion, is the role of soft skills? When I say soft skills, I'm talking about things like sales, communication, networking, and emotional intelligence, which is basically understanding your emotional state, where you are, and how that relates to other people you're dealing with. What's the role of building these skills in success as an entrepreneur based on your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many ways we can go down on that. But I think I want to tie this to our previous conversation and just be able to endure failure and hard moments, right? Because our soft skills, and when it comes down to emotional intelligence, is how can we process information these hard times and really use that to motivate us to kind of build our companies, right? um, Soft skills are super important, as an entrepreneur. We need to sell people, we need to know how to pitch, we need to build relationships, we need to communicate, right? We need to problem solve. It's just, how do we work well with others, and how do we work well alone, right? Be able to communicate and lead teams, and that leadership component of soft skills is massive, right? And these can be learned. I mean, they can be learned by trial and error, by going through, taking courses, but it was trying to manage people and teams, right? That's a big thing. But emotional intelligence, I mean, also, which connects into stoicism, right? Being the ability to be almost neutral in a sense that comes down to your emotions, but it is really big for entrepreneurship. Emotional intelligence, comes with self awareness, right? Be able to tell your state of mind, be able to communicate. There's another pillar here, so we can actually talk to other people's and talk about our emotions and properly articulate how we're feeling, and have empathy for other people at the same time, right? But also to control our emotions at the same time. And I will admit, I get bad at this too, because when you're building your startup, it's everything, right? You put your whole life into, and every hour, every weekend, every evening, to building this company, and then you're boosted up by the media, everything's great, and when that's ripped away, your identity is lost, right? I mean, you are angry, you're pissed at the world, you're trying to figure out what's going on, and be able to control that is very hard, right? When everyone's there to support and then everyone goes away, when you have an opportunity and it's released from you, when the investment's there and the investment's pulled out, when customers quit, I mean, these are all hard parts of our business. Firing our friends, firing our employees, being 30 days left in cash in the bank, freaking out, right? Living in your parents' basement, going again. Like, these are all hard moments. So emotional intelligence is A, how to properly and courageously talking about them, because we need to share these failures, but B, also recognizing the fact that, okay, in the terms of stoicism, can I change this, right? Yes or no, right? Or do I have an influence on the outcome? And be able to act accordingly to that. So we need to be able to control our emotions, channel that into energy, into really moving things forward and being curious and experimenting and trying to find a solution, instead of being slumping and falling back and pitting ourselves, and playing the blame game, and being angry the whole time, right? So we got to find that happy medium, and having the right emotional intelligence will get you through that turmoil, will make those rock bottom moments a way to actually feel yourself and to launch off of them into success.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with you. I think you hit all the nice points there on emotional intelligence. I really liked what you brought up about stoicism, which is basically focusing on what you can control, especially as we're in a pandemic. There's so much out of our control. And if you worry about things outside of our control, it doesn't get you any closer to a solution. It just makes it more miserable. But on the note of emotional intelligence, I generally categorize them into four areas. And I think you really hit all of those. There's a self-awareness piece, which is knowing what you're thinking and why you're thinking what you're thinking. And then there's the regulation piece, emotional regulation, being able to control your emotions, even though they're going crazy, but being able to just put a control on them. And then there's the empathy piece, which is, putting yourself in other people's shoes and being able to manage other people as you work with them. And then the last piece, which is skilled relationships, which is basically combining everything together to, to show who you are as you relate with other people. But I feel like the real root or the core skill to really master is self-awareness, because when you are aware of things, it really controls and dictates everything else, because you know where you are, if you're in a bad place, if you're in a good place, and you're able to then take actions that really make sure they are aligned with your long-term plans based on your understanding of where you are. How would you say you've grown this awareness of yourself? Like when I think about myself, being able to journal and being able to do like some meditation has really helped me to be aware of where I am at every given point. What activities would you say you've done to be able to train or improve that skill? And the reason why I ask that is a lot of our listeners are probably very new to this game. This is a whole new ball game for them. How can you advise someone who is not skilled in this area to build that skill?
Yeah, by experiencing it. I
Mm,
mean, we can go, I mean, we say teachers teach because they can't do, right? Which, I hate that because but part of it's slightly true. The fact that if we have never experienced or gone through something before, then we're not going to know how to handle it, right? You're not going to handle your first breakup unless you have that, to your first divorce, if it ever happens, right? Your first startup failure, right?
mm,
What's it like to lose everything? What's it like to gain everything? What's it
mm,
like to lose, a friend or not get that investment?
mm,
Um, Me when I was 15 to 18, vastly different. 18 to 21, extremely different. 25, I don't know who I was. I was different from what I was saying, right? In a better sense.
mm,
30, completely different from when I was 25, right?
mm,
And this is all me going through each of these moments and these experiences, learning how to cope, reading how to cope, talking to other people on how to cope, and actually going through these emotional turmoils. I've used that word a few times, but successes and failures, right?
mm,
We
mm,
can't practice stoicism. We can't understand emotional intelligence unless it's actually put into practice, I believe.
mm.
And so go out there, fail, get hurt, understand, learn to control, learn to rechannel, and then do it all over again.
Absolutely. And I think you really hit a good point there. You can practice all you want, you can read all you want, but if you're not really in the arena, if you're not experiencing those emotions, it's hard to have any sort of growth unless you're in there and you're experiencing them. So that definitely makes sense. So in our conversation so far, we've talked about your entrepreneurship journey. We've talked about your failures and how you've dealt with them. We've talked about how to look for capital, when to look for capital, how to approach investors. We've talked about scaling businesses. We've talked about artificial intelligence and the usefulness of that for the business. The last piece of questions I want to ask you about is we're in a pandemic so far, and this is something that has affected everybody, whether you're a normal professional, you're an entrepreneur. How have you dealt with the frustration and the problems that the pandemic has brought, and all the social distancing and not networking? How have you dealt with that? And what was your advice for people who are dealing with that? Any words of wisdom on that?
So how have I dealt with working home alone, not seeing friends all the time, and how have I dealt with doing things remotely? I've been preparing for this for the past 10 years. Like that, that's every entrepreneur in the fact here, right? So it's everyday life. I mean, don't get me wrong. Yeah, I don't see as many people as I see now going to many networking events, but at the same time, I mean, it's a great time to put your head down, to learn, to strategize, and to try something, right? And connect with people online, which is very hard to do sometimes. Even though the pandemic, it is easy, but finding like-minded people can be difficult. But the only thing I can say is that right now is your time to make a move, right? And that is always super frustrating because you see all these YouTube videos, these Instagram posts, you see everything where now's your time to move. You can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. I'm 23 years old and I made $50 million, right? Like you see all this crap and this BS out there. You got to ignore the media and the noise, right? Pick something small. You don't need to have a successful startup by the end of this pandemic or even have a business made. Make progressions, right? If you're interested in the industry, learn about it. If you're interested in going down and building a startup, learn more about the sales and marketing side, right? Get the tools and skills you need in order to make this happen, but at least be a little bit proactive. Do something once per day, per week. And then leverage the alone time, learn to be alone, but leverage the alone time to increase your skill set, to read a bit more and just be a better person on that front. Again, doing something opens up doors. Talking with somebody opens up doors. Learning something's opening up doors. And I can't stress this enough. When you try something new, I promise you that it will lead to something quite interesting or someone at least to talk to, right? But the whole purpose is you need to continue learning and you need to continue trying. And if you're just sitting still and stagnant, then you're going to go crazy and you're going to kick yourself more and more and fall into that vicious feedback loop of, I'm not doing something. I hate myself for doing something. I hate myself for hating myself for not doing something. And then you watch Netflix, eat a lot of pizza, stop working out, and fall into a slump, right? And that's hard to get out of, one thing at a time.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with that. Just activities is always important, no matter how small or, how small it is, you have to just do something to progress and move forward. Last question I have here for you. What would you say is a prediction? And, there's no right or wrong answers to this, but considering that, again, we're in a pandemic and this is affecting everyone, there's bound to be some shift as a culture, as a society, based on all of these things we're all experiencing together. What, in your opinion, will be the result, whether negative or positively, of this pandemic over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years? How do you think it will affect us moving forward?
I think companies are going to realize that people can work home alone and that they don't need the expensive office space. They're going to push people more towards a remote position. I think people are excited about that. I think it's going to trend very positively, and then I think it's going to crash. I think people are going to realize that they need their interpersonal relationships with other people. They need the connection. They need the water cooler talk. They need that collaboration in order to succeed. That Zoom and Google calls are just too much and causing fatigue. I think after the crash, people will find a healthy balance of what works and what doesn't. And I think the overall outcome is not 5 days in office in the week. When it comes down to employment, it's going to be maybe 2 to 3, or you dictate your schedule. That's one area. For the entrepreneur side and not the employers and working, I believe that's going to open up a lot more communication, that people being open to doing business over the phone. Chatting with one of my colleagues the other day, he said when he had to chat with Walmart, he would fly down to Fayetteville, Arkansas, and meet with the Walmart representatives for an hour for a deal. But now they're saying, well, don't fly, let's just have an hour chat. And it's never been like that, right? So business deals are easy to happen. It's more than the norm to cold call people or email them and set up a conversation. Everyone's open and has more time. They're looking at their email. They're looking for things to do. We get distracted. No one's perfect in being something to do all the time. I think that's going to become more of a norm, where people are going to be a lot more open and interested in communication digitally.
Absolutely, absolutely. And any last words of advice for our listeners? Any takeaway points you'd like to share? Words of wisdom?
What are you doing? Get off your butt and do something. But honestly, realistically, with that is ignore all the kids and media and everyone says I have $1 billion YouTube channel, or this is your day to strive, wake up, and be motivated. I mean, cut that all out. Limit your Instagram, your social media. Do one thing at a time and just learn one skill. Learn a skill a month, right? Or read a book a month. I mean, hopefully more, but I mean, try to learn something and try just to do something, because inches are all you need, right? I mean, every inch adds up. I mean, we're talking in terms of football metaphors. I mean, that's all you need to finally hit that, that touchdown there. So try something. Don't be discouraged by everyone else who is ahead of you, because there's always someone ahead and always someone behind. Turn that off, proof, heads down, connect with people, and I promise you will find your success.
Yes, and considering you mentioned read a book a month, it sounds like you're someone who does a lot of reading. I do love reading as well. What book are you currently reading right now, or what book would you encourage people to check out based on your reading?
A few of them. The Courage to be Disliked is pretty cool. Taking a different look at Freudian type of view and how your past does not dictate who you are today, and how to just focus on the moment and what you're building.
Mm-hmm.
Never Split the Difference is an amazing negotiation book I think you should take a look at, which is really cool. And if you really want to get into Stoicism, you can check out Ryan Holiday, and Obstacle is the Way, which is pretty neat.
Yeah.
Last book I recommend, if you want something that's going to kind of spark a fire and get you excited, there's 2 books actually I recommend of this. Shoe Dog, which is a story of Nike. And then The Hard Thing About Hard Things is a brilliant entrepreneur story about all his failures and his learnings along the way, and that's going to fire you up.
Absolutely. Those are wonderful recommendations. I've read a couple of them, especially around holidays books. Just a masterpiece on stoicism for sure. Well, it's been a huge pleasure having you on the show, Bryce. It's been so much that we've discussed and lots of wisdom you've shared with us. I'm super excited for everyone to hear this. And thanks for coming onto the show.
Thank you so much for having me, and you're doing a great job. I mean, I'm excited that you're doing this, so keep it up. And yeah, I hope to be on another one of these in the future when we realign in something else.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.